Good morning. Commissioners, Chief Moore, Mr. Teefank, Madam Secretary, Mr. Inspector General Mark Smith, Mr. City Attorney Carlos De La Guerra, and members of the public. Today is Tuesday, December 5th, 2023. It is 9:30 a.m. This is a regular meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Please let the record reflect Commissioners Suthers, Shields, Briggs, and Garcia are present, and we have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. We welcome everyone attending this morning. The Police Commission is committed to ensuring equal access to its meetings. It is requested that individuals who require the services of a translator contact the board secretary no later than the day preceding the meeting. Whenever possible, a translator will be provided. Sign language interpreters, assistive listening devices, or other auxiliary aids and/or services may be provided upon request. To ensure availability, you are advised to make your request at least 72 hours prior to the meeting you wish to attend. All public comment will be heard during item number 2 on the agenda. We will dedicate a total of 45 minutes to public comment. Members of the public will have 1 minute per agenda item for a maximum of 2 minutes total. At the request of the speaker will be given 1 additional minute for general public comment for a maximum of 3 minutes total. The order of speakers will be: a speaker in this room will go first, then we will take a speaker watching today's meeting on Zoom. We will alternate between speakers in the room and Zoom for a total of 45 minutes. Members of the public who participate in public comment are reminded that they can speak to any item on the agenda or a matter within the jurisdiction of the Board of Police Commissioners. Public comment is your opportunity to address the board, so you are free to express your opinion on matters before the board and to generally express when you disagree with other opinions expressed. However, directing your comments to other individuals who have spoken or attacking others who have expressed their opinions shall be deemed off-topic, and your public comment period will be concluded. Members of the public, if you choose to participate in the public comment portion of the agenda, you can participate in this meeting in a number of ways outlined on the agenda. Number 1, submit a speaker card to one of the officers, who will then give the card to the board secretary, indicating you wish to speak during the meeting. 2, submit written public comment in advance of the meeting to the email address policecommission@lapd.online. 3, if you have logged into Zoom, raise your virtual hand. And 4, you can call into the phone number listed on the agenda and press *9 if you want to speak on the agenda item. If you wish to just listen to the meeting, you can call into the phone number listed on the agenda that are designated for the call-in and listening. Message for those attending the meeting in person. These meetings are regular meetings between the board, the department, and key stakeholders. Meetings of the Board of Police Commissioners are open to the public. The state's Ralph M. Brown Act affords the public the opportunity to be present at meetings, hear the presentations and dialogue in real time, and provide feedback via the public comment period. During these meetings, there is a need for the board to carry out public business expeditiously without delays or disruptions. Members of the audience shall not engage in any conduct which causes an actual disruption of the meeting. Those attending in person are reminded that disruptive behavior will be cause for removal. If you disrupt this meeting, you will be provided with only 1 warning to cease disruptive behavior. If you fail to cease such behavior, you will be removed from the meeting. While in the boardroom, members of the audience must be seated. Standing is not permitted. In the past, standing may have been permitted for a few, but moving forward, this courtesy will not be afforded to attendees except for credentialed members of the press. All attendees must be seated. Failure to follow this rule will result in a warning and/or removal from the meeting. At this time, we'll move to item number 1, the report of the Chief of Police. Chief Moore.
Commissioner President Suthers, Vice President Shields, Commissioner Briggs, Commissioner Garcia, good morning. Mr. Inspector General, Mr. Teefank, and our City Attorney. As I do each week, I'm going to talk about significant events, crime, and as well as our personnel resources. The last report was some 2 weeks ago, so this does cover an extended period of time and a very active one. First, let me speak about the ongoing manner of protests and demonstrations and activities involving the Hamas-Israeli war. The department continues to facilitate active demonstrations and marches, both pro-Israeli as well as pro-Palestinian. During this period of time, there was significant events in regards to a targeted protest at a residence that occurred in the Brentwood area. During Unfortunately, that targeted protest, there were acts of felony vandalism, an assault with a deadly weapon in which an individual, one of the demonstrators, struck a victim, a neighbor that had come out to observe what was going on at the location, at the residence. And we do and are investigating these crimes as hate crimes. I have spoken with both our city attorney as well as our district attorney regarding instances of violence that has occurred at various protests and demonstrations, and our commitment is to, again, facilitate the demonstrations, lawful expressions. However, at the same time, while providing for the safety of everyone involved, we will aggressively investigate and pursue prosecution of those that engage in violence of any type. Secondly, I want to speak to our outreach and engagement with all groups that are involved in this very trying time in our world, on the world stage, when we see the events in the Middle East. We are doing outreach and engagement with all communities with this. I want to thank Commissioner Suthers for attending with me, with Councilmember Park, who organized a community forum on anti-Semitism on the 29th of November. Additionally, Commissioner Suthers and others, we attended a meeting with a Muslim cleric that we had an opportunity to sit down for a couple of hours and speak about the Palestinian land and the turmoil and the history of this conflict, and where we're seeing most recently this tremendous loss of life on both sides, if you will, of many involved. The efforts of the outreach in both these groups is to ensure that the department remains in a neutral and a facility position, that we support the rights of everyone, the right of life for everyone, and that while we will not get into the commentary regarding the events in the Middle East, we want all Angelinos to know that this department will stand to support the rights of each individual, to protect everyone from others who feel like they may have an opportunity, or that this is a circumstance in which violence against another individual would somehow be facilitated or allowed to go unaddressed. Next item I would like to speak to about is that during this period of time on the 21st of November, two officers that were conducting a follow-up investigation along the 57 freeway, searching for what was believed to be a handgun that was thrown from a vehicle that was being pursued, were violently struck by a DUI driver. Both these individuals suffered significant injuries. I visited them bedside. The driver officer actually, in addition to brain trauma, was released and then readmitted later because of the seriousness of the original injury. I am happy to report that both officers are now home and recovering from the injuries sustained, and the driver of that vehicle that struck them was booked for felonious DUI. Next topic I'd like to talk about is what has certainly gathered a great deal of attention, which was the senseless and brutal homicide of 3 persons experiencing homelessness, as well as another individual, an LA County employee, who on his way home was apparently followed off by the same gunman, and during a robbery at that home was senselessly shot and killed. I am grateful for the tireless work of Central Bureau Homicide Detectives as well as South Bureau Homicide Detectives that in the initial days and hours of these 3 homicides worked diligently with our forensic science personnel to tie in via ballistics and other information the fact that these were 3 interrelated homicides and that the potential for more violence was clear and present. Upon learning of that information, we assembled quickly a task force that involved Robbery Homicide Division under the leadership of Deputy Chief Chris Pitcher, our Chief of Detectives, Commander Jay Mastic, as well as the Captain Scott Williams. And again, this work from Thursday through Saturday and to today mobilized this region of law enforcement resources to gather as much information possible to identify the person responsible. As has been publicly reported, that investigation through Friday into Saturday morning identified through positive ballistic evidence that Mr. Powell, who's now been arraigned for 4 counts of murder, was the person we believe responsible for these senseless and brutal crimes. Additionally, the department is also working across the United States, the nation, working with our federal partners and our Joint Regional Intelligence Center to identify that this gunman's actions, which were so brutal and so in such a short period of time, had such a devastating results that we're unclear whether or not he has any prior violence that may have been unsolved or undetected to this point. This case was solved both by the hard work and solid technical expertise of our homicide detectives in concert with technology. Technology, including our National Ballistic Information Network, which is a national system by the Department of Justice that scientifically examines bullet casings and can tie those bullet casings into other instances where the same gun is used, and can also identify that gun when it's recovered as being a murder weapon or otherwise involved in violence. That nationwide system, we've entered our ballistic information into, and we're encouraging other agencies to consult with that should they have a similar event that occurred previous to this that has been unsolved. Additionally, in the initial investigation by the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, they were able to identify the suspect's vehicle that was involved, and including its license plate, and it entered into the regional license plate information systems that exist, including a system called the Flock system, which the Beverly Hills Police Department utilizes in their public spaces. Wednesday night, as has been reported, that system detected Mr. Powell's vehicle as it entered into their jurisdiction. A vehicle stop was conducted, and a handgun was recovered that we believe to be the murder weapon, as well as Mr. Powell's arrest. I want to call out that today and in future weeks, the department will be discussing with the commission our efforts and engagement to take the level of existing use of those technologies within the department and expand them as we see continued success. The Beverly Hills system alone has solved more than 6 homicides this year involving the Los Angeles Police Department. A triple homicide that occurred in the Bel Air area, which allowed us, because of the suspect's movements, to identify them as they moved through Beverly Hills and alert us to their presence and tie that back to solving that crime, as well as now these 3 are now 4 murders with this individual coming into town. Next issue I'd like to talk about is we did have a series of officer-involved shootings and a dog shooting this period. The animal shooting occurred on the 21st of November at approximately 11 o'clock at night when Northeast uniform officers responded to a domestic violence radio call. Upon their arrival, they received information from a witness that an individual had come home by the name of Franklin Monroy. He's a male Hispanic, 40 years of age. He had come home highly intoxicated and had created a disturbance with the family there. Unfortunately, as he came through into the backyard of that, he was brutally attacked by the family's pit bull terrier. Upon entering the yard, officers formulated with the supervisor a tactical plan to rescue Mr. Monroe and ensure that the officers were able to safely do that. They brought in additional equipment such as a fire extinguisher and less lethal munitions. Officers found Mr. Monroe on the ground, and he was being bitten by this animal on his arms. Officers attempted to distract the animal and move him away by the use of those tools I've mentioned. And those tools were effective in causing the animal to stop biting Mr. Monroe and to retreat to another area of the yard. As officers approached Mr. Monroe, they grabbed and pulled him away in an effort to pull him to safety. While they're in the process of doing that, unfortunately, the dog advanced towards the officers, climbed over Mr. Monroe, and ran towards a supervisor who was standing behind the officers. This resulted in an officer-involved shooting. The animal was struck and died at the scene. Animal control responded and transported him to an animal shelter. Mr. Monroe sustained significant puncture wounds to both his arms and was treated by the fire department and later at a nearby hospital where he was listed then. This was a week and a half ago, in stable condition. There are no other officers or other community members that were injured during this event. Next issue was a canine with a canine contact. This is a search by the Los Angeles Police Department canine unit that resulted in a dog bite of an individual that resulted in that person's hospitalization, which by definition is a categorical use of force. This occurred on the 27th of November, where at 1:55 in the morning, Rampart Division uniform officers were patrolling in the area of Bonnie Bray Street and Court Street. There they observed 2 males standing in the middle of the roadway next to a double-parked vehicle. As the officers drove closer, one of the males, later identified as Jackson Romero, a male Hispanic, 26 years of age, initially turned to walk away and then began running. Officers observed that he grabbed a dark satchel that he was wearing across his chest as he ran, and the officers believed that he was armed with a firearm. Officers gave chase and broadcast that they were in foot pursuit. And during that foot pursuit, Mr. Romero removed the satchel from across his chest and threw it to the ground before running away and out of the officer's sight. Officers established a perimeter in the surrounding area and recovered the satchel, which inside contained a loaded handgun. Metropolitan Division K-9 officers responded to the perimeter and conducted a canine search. After that search, Romero was discovered hiding inside of a rear yard of a single-family residence in the 200 block of Bonnie Brae Street. It was in that yard that a canine contact occurred. Mr. Romero sustained an injury to his left heel and ankle. He surrendered to the officers and was taken to custody without any further incident. He was transported by rescue ambulance to a hospital where he was hospitalized for the injury to his left heel, which required surgery. Medical staff did attribute the injury to the canine contact. Officers were unable to locate the second male. He is still outstanding. There were no officers or any community members injured, and the officers, as I stated earlier, recovered a loaded Blue Steel semi-automatic 9mm handgun. The Force Investigations will conduct their review of this, and their findings will be sent to me in my report to this commission relative to the officer's actions and his compliance with policy. On the 29th of November, officers responded from the Olympic Division to a assault with a deadly weapon call where the suspect was reportedly in the 300 block of South Kenmore. As officers were driving on Kenmore Avenue, they observed an individual, later identified as Donamica Brownis, a female Hispanic, 28 years of age. She was in the middle of the roadway attempting to stab a male Hispanic, 47 years of age, with a knife. Officers requested a backup, exited their vehicle, and ordered Brownis to drop the weapon. She apparently ignored the officer's command and continued to move towards the victim while swinging the knife. The victim had accessed a dresser drawer that had been discarded on the sidewalk and was holding that drawer up in front of his chest in an effort to shield himself from being stabbed by Briones. As the officers approached, this is when the officer-involved shooting occurred. Briones was struck by the gunfire and was taken into custody. She sustained a gunshot wound to her hip and was transported to a nearby medical center where she was booked by medical staff and later released. Where she was treated by medical staff and then later released and booked for assault with a deadly weapon. The victim sustained an injury from the knife wound, and unfortunately it was minor and did not require hospitalization. A kitchen knife with approximately a 3-inch blade was recovered and has been booked into evidence. Next item occurred is an officer-involved shooting that occurred on the 30th of November at about 3:38 in the afternoon. On that date, earlier, North Hollywood Division uniform officers responded to a radio call of an ADW suspect there now at a business located at the 7500 block of Laurel Canyon. The suspect, later identified as Francisco Javier Alba, a male Hispanic, 52 years of age, had assaulted reportedly an employee inside the location and then exited and walked across the street to the west sidewalk. Officers arrived at the location and spoke with the victim, who provided the details and described what was considered or classified as a misdemeanor battery and that a vandalism had occurred. The victim described Alba as a suspect but declined to make a private person's arrest. The officers exited the location, returned to their vehicle, and began completing an associated crime report when Alba returned. Alba reportedly approached the officers while holding a drywall hammer with a combined hatchet blade in his left hand, while he appeared to be wearing numerous layers of clothing. Alba began arguing with the officers when they ordered him not to return to the business. He eventually walked across the street and became increasingly agitated. Officers requested additional units and for approximately 35 minutes continued to order Alba to leave the area and drop the bladed hammer. Alba then crossed the street towards the officers with a hammer in his hand, reportedly. Officers gave Alba numerous orders to stop, get out of the street, and drop the hammer. He refused to comply, resulting in the officers utilizing numerous less lethal munitions, including a taser, a 40mm less lethal launcher, and bing-bang shotgun, all which proved to be ineffective. Alba continued to advance on one officer while still armed with a hammer in his right hand, stating, "Shoot it," at which point an officer-involved shooting occurred. Alba was struck by gunfire, fell to the ground, and was taken into custody. He was transported to a nearby hospital where he was admitted for gunshot wounds and was in stable condition. The drywall hammer was recovered from the location. There are no officers or community members injured as a result of that event. Lastly, on the 1st of December, and about 1:30 in the afternoon, Devonshire uniform officers responded to an assault with a deadly weapon call in the 9600 block of Lamary Avenue. Additional communication broadcasts identified that a suspect, later identified as Lisa Davis, a female white, 63 years of age, and a sister to the person calling 911, was in possession of a handgun and had entered her sister's house. Upon our officer's arrival, the officers and a sergeant observed that the house was actually on fire. The officers located the person who had called 911 in a neighbor's backyard, who advised that Davis was in the yard next door. The sergeant and officers entered that backyard of the residence as the fire was actively burning and announced their presence. As officers searched the areas behind the garage, they turned a corner and immediately was confronted by Davis, who pointed a handgun at the officer, and an officer-involved shooting occurred. Davis was struck by gunfire and fell to the ground, was taken into custody. Fire department transported Davis to a nearby hospital where she was pronounced deceased. There are no officers or other community members injured. A Walter Model P22 22 caliber blue steel automatic handgun registered to Davis, along with 2 folding knives and 2 containers of pepper spray, were recovered and booked as evidence. Force Investigations Division will respond to each of these events and conduct their investigation. Within 30 days of each event, we will be posting a critical incident video detailing the information that we have gathered to that point in the circumstances of the officer-involved shootings. Year-to-date, we now have 34 officer-involved shootings. Our year-to-date in 2022, that number was 31. We have 16 fatal officer-involved shootings. Last year at this time, that number was 14. Moving to my next discussion, which is on crime, I want to report that while we have seen a continued reduction in violent crime in all categories, that reduction has been challenged most recently with an increase in the number of shootings as well as the number of homicides. While after some 8+ months of being in the negative on both counts, we saw that trend begin to change in September, October, and November, where in November we added more homicides this year than we had last year. That matched our earlier experience in October and September as well. This last week, particularly, we saw a home invasion robbery that occurred in the Granada Hills area involving a shooting where the suspects who had entered the location, and to the information we have, kidnapped a woman that, and at gunpoint took her to an adjoining room where another victim was at. And during that ordeal, the homeowner armed themselves with a handgun, and in defense of themselves and others that were present, a gunfire exchange occurred. Additionally to that, we saw a murder-suicide involving a fire where a man in his 50s apparently appears to have shot and killed his aunt when she was found in a rear swimming pool area, again in the San Fernando Valley, as well as then setting the house on fire after what appears to have been him committing his suicide. A dog was also found inside the location. So we are concerned about this increased levels in violence. We saw last week also a gunman go into a restaurant at the LA Live area and brutally assassinate, for lack of a better term, walked right up to an individual who sat alone at the bar area and without any provocation or exchange, shot and killed this man and then fled. Robbery Homicide Division is also conducting that investigation in pursuit to identify the person responsible. The department's work in this area will continue to focus its resources on identifying those that are responsible for this violence and bringing them before the criminal justice system. I'm proud of the work that our people are doing. They are solving these crimes. Our homicide clearance rate is above 70% year to date. Additionally, I do believe that the impact of their work, we're seeing advances in some areas of the city. For instance, in South Los Angeles, we're seeing fewer shooting violence than we have in some of the previous periods. But it's not uniform across the city, as I've just discussed here. Additionally, I want to talk briefly that our other efforts in fighting crime, and particularly in the property crime area and in reducing robberies, is in our Organized Retail Theft Task Force. Their work continues where year-to-date, and this task force has been in place since August 21st, a cooperative effort between the Los Angeles Police Department, Sheriff's Department, the California Highway Patrol, Beverly Hills, Burbank, and Glendale Police Departments, as well as Santa Monica. They have they've made more than 346 arrests. With that, they've recovered some 20 firearms and conducted 86 search warrants and recovered more than $1.2 million in property. Particular stores such as the Nike store at the Freedom Plaza, as well as the Macy's store, which had a high-profile grab and run during the Thanksgiving holiday. These are all our investigative efforts are identifying and bringing these individuals before the criminal justice system, and we are seeing the district attorney's office as well as the state attorney general filing felony counts and holding these individuals responsible. We're aware, very candidly about these instances also occurring outside of the city of Los Angeles, and we're working with our partner agencies to identify individuals that we believe are traveling across this region and conducting these crimes. Lastly, in regards to our personnel strength, we stand at 8,947 sworn personnel. That's a reduction of 23 from my last report. Our civilian professional staff stand at 2,621. That's an increase of 11 from my last report. That concludes my remarks, and I appreciate your indulgence as we had an extended period of time here.
Chief, thank you for the very extensive report, and I will go to Commissioner Calanche for any questions or comments. Sorry. Apologies. I'll go to Commissioner Briggs for any questions or comments.
Thank you, President Suthers. Chief, we're in the holiday period, and I know a lot of folks are concerned both with their safety and their safety as they go about the holidays in terms of shopping, and not only shopping, but returning home with presents. So what is the department doing with regard to, I know you mentioned the organized retail theft, but in addition to measures taken by the department to protect not only the retailers, but also folks who are out there shopping, what are we doing to protect others from follow-home theft
So-
that may occur during this time frame?
Thank you. The department is in receipt of some additional funds that is allowing us to increase some uniform patrols and foot beats in our commercial corridors. Additionally, the public will see members of our mounted unit from Metropolitan Division be deployed at our major shopping centers on a rotational basis. And our efforts will be in the hours of, the shopping hours, if you will, for those increased presence. We do remind the public that while we're working with shopping centers and commercial corridors to understand underlying instances of whether it be a theft from a vehicle or some type of effort to endanger someone's safety, that we're laser on focused on going to those locations and arresting anyone who might be involved in that, but also by that visible presence of deterring. But we are asking the public to be mindful on this shopping season that there are opportunists that are looking for shoppers to, collect their presents and so forth, go back to their car and perhaps deposit those items and then go back and engage in a second round, if you will. We're asking people to lock it, hide it, and keep it. For their preventive efforts, to recognize that there are those that are wishing to prey upon them, to be mindful of their surroundings, to park in well-lit areas, to accompany others when they can, so that they're not alone and they're not in some isolated location by themselves. As they travel about, and certainly as they travel home, to be mindful of their surroundings. If there should be an instance of an individual they believe is following them, for them to call 911 and for them to go to the nearest police station, to obey traffic signs, not to speed or go through lights or otherwise to try to evade someone, but simply act in a typical and a rational fashion, drive to their nearest police station while calling us. And the police department, this is an emergency call and we will respond. Lastly, we are seeing an increase in burglaries as well, in residential burglaries, particularly along in the San Fernando Valley, along the portion north of the 118 freeway, in the San Fernando Valley, in a portion south of Ventura Boulevard, primarily in the Topanga, Tarzana, Woodland Hills, and Encino area. But in those areas, the common modus operandi is for suspects during day and evening hours is for them to prowl those areas and enter through smashing rear windows. We're asking the public's help and assistance in recognizing that a neighborhood watch, working with their senior lead, so that they're aware of trends. The shooting of the home invasion that occurred this past weekend, a relative of that victim was similarly had a burglary that happened a few short weeks before in generally the same area. So be mindful of surrounding crime trends. Make sure that their lighting on their home is in good working order, that they're locking and securing their doors and windows, that they have security systems when possible, and that those security systems are working. Many times our officers find that cameras and other security systems are in fact installed, but the homeowner, through lack of maintenance or perhaps just casual disregard, was no longer using those systems. Those systems are invaluable to us in identifying individuals, and while they may not stop in that instance that from occurring, while they do have a deterrent value, and while it doesn't stop, that certainly gives us valuable information in identifying individuals that we believe are responsible for this. So deterrence, prevention is absolutely key to our success working together. And I'm also proud of the retail organizations and our business improvement districts that are working alongside us for the safety of those that are going out and enjoying the holiday season, both whether it be in conducting gift shopping or enjoying an evening out or a dinner or other celebration with their family and friends.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Vice President Shields.
Thank you, President Suthers, and thank you, Chief, for the report. I want to first start by, really commending the department and the detectives who identified the pattern in the 3 murders of our unhoused community and really rushing the ballistics to identify that pattern. Individuals think that they can prey on the vulnerable community because no one will care. And the department demonstrated that they do care about the lives of the unhoused by acting quickly. I think this was also a great example of departments communicating with each other and using technology to not only save. Excuse me, I am speaking. If you do not.
Ma'am, one person is going to speak at a time. One person is going to speak at a time. You're disrupting the meeting. You are disrupting the meeting. Thank you. Vice President Shields, please continue.
Thank you, President Suthers. In addition to the departments working together and communicating with each other, I think it was a great example of technology not only saving countless hours of police work, but also taking someone very violent off the street. So,
Can I just add one other component? I would be remiss if I don't identify the leadership of Mayor Bass and the leadership of Rob Marino, our Assistant Chief, and Giselle Espinoza. They partnered together, and under Mayor Bass, she mobilized this region's homeless outreach and providers, both in regards to opening emergency shelters that were otherwise closed, and so that the added capacity for people who are unhoused, people who are alone and vulnerable, could have access to safe and secure housing, and then also mobilized outreach workers to distribute flyers and information. So it was very appreciative to see that it wasn't just the pursuit of identifying the person responsible, but it was this city working with the county to try to stabilize and provide for as much safety of a very vulnerable population during a very critical time.
thank you, Chief. And I had one question or 2 questions relating to the officer-involved shootings. One on November 29th and one on November 30th. Was for the November 29th, and I know we will be obviously assessing this at a later date and the commission will evaluate. Were any, less lethal uses of force attempted before the firearm and before the firearm was used? And for the November 30th, was there any opportunity to request a SMART team, or was a SMART team present?
So on the November 29th, I've actually seen preliminarily the video on this, and what I saw from the video was the officers, upon their arrival, they observed this individual actively attacking the victim, and they literally exited their vehicle and took a few steps, and their efforts then were, the use of deadly force was in defense of life of the victim, who was actively attempting to retreat and holding a drawer, this Chester drawer up as literally as a shield, as this person was attempting to evade that defense and stab him. In the second event, the officers had not called, to my knowledge, a SMART unit, but they did engage with the individual for some 30 to 35 minutes. Now, I don't know if one was requested and was en route or available, but I do know that the officers had, as I referenced earlier, 35 minutes of dialogue of attempting to de-escalate the situation and actually just have the person leave the area rather than take the person into custody for the fact that he had a weapon and he had actually involved himself in this vandalism and misdemeanor. It does appear that the individual was suffering from some type of mental health crisis. He had clothed himself in added layers of clothing, which, very, very bulky. And again, we will release a video on this soon, and that will demonstrate what I've talked about here, which unfortunately the less lethal tools were defeated by that added padding that he had shielded himself with.
Thank you, Chief. And I would just ask, just a reminder to all the officers that the SMART units are available and should be reached out. Again, we don't know whether that was happened in this situation, but just again, the more we can utilize those units, and if they're not available at the time, then we know that there needs to be more resources
Yes.
provided to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Garcia.
Yeah, Chief, thank you for the report. Regarding the organized crime or the grab and goes, from my understanding, the Nike store or the community around the Nike store assembles some elders to sort of be present around the store in the vicinity in an attempt to identify individuals and potentially engage and support them as a preventive measure. Have we looked at formally doing something like that in other places where we actually engage community members, similar to safe passages around schools? And again, it's in order to prevent individuals and engage them and potentially offer them services as an alternative to what they're intending to do.
Yes, I'm proud of the work down in Southeast area as well as Community Safety Partnership. Captain Whitman, who is partnering with the shopping center owner or operator there at Freedom Plaza, in concert with reaching out with Nike and other commercial outlets that are there for their efforts to counter this by having a visible presence of security and ambassadors and those that have standing in a community to deter opportunists from preying upon those locations. So I am very proud of the Watts Gang Task Force and their involvement, as well as working with the council office, to really speak to the fact that the community plays a critical role in the safety and the security of those businesses. So that is their primary thing.
Ma'am, you're being warned. This is the first and only warning you will get. If you don't stop disrupting the meeting, you will be removed.
So that game plan is available and is used whenever possible. That location is unique amongst others, but for instance, when we look at Ladera Heights and others, we see similar locations that have opportunities that are coming in habitually. What the department is doing there is, in each instance, is trying to identify whether it be security or community stakeholders that will take a role. Our preference is that for the theft not to occur at all. And for our efforts to be allowed to work on more pressing matters and more serious instances. So that is a strategy that we'll continue to use whenever possible.
Thank you.
Chief, thank you again for the detailed report, and I'd like to echo the words of my fellow commissioners here with regards to the swift arrest of the individual responsible for the series of homicides and the use of the technology and the partnerships with other agencies to bring that to a swift conclusion. Moving on, again, thank you for your consistent engagement with the faith-based communities, particularly at this extraordinary time with what's going on, not just in our country, but in the world. But with that, I just want to ask a question. Last Friday in New York City and Westchester County, upstate New York, they had 15 fake bomb threats targeting synagogues. And as you know, this is swatting, trying to deploy the scarce police resources that most agencies already have. I just wanted to ask you, with Hanukkah approaching this Friday and Shabbat services taking place every Friday, what we're doing to make sure that those kinds of things don't happen. If they do, how we will respond.
So we are seeing frequent use of swatting. For the public's awareness, what that means is through the use of technology, the malicious use of technology, individual actors will feign a active shooting scenario or a hostage scenario or some other immediate threat of life and through a 911 call, which is meant to prompt a massive police response. And very dangerous set of circumstances, and the department's efforts, working with their communications division, is to monitor instances that are occurring across the region. We do work closely with our FBI partners in identifying patterns and trends relative to this, and it has, to this point, with the heightened the heightened instances of hate, we've seen attacks both against mosques and synagogues using this tactic. And we communicate that frequently, while at the same time recognizing that the potential for such a actual scenario does exist. Our outreach with the houses of worship is to make them aware of these events, to ask and review with them their security protocols, to understand how they control access to their facility, how they monitor their own parishioners and those that may frequent the location. And then lastly, we're working currently on an effort with mosques and synagogues and other houses of worship to pursue a state grant that will provide the opportunity for additional officers to be deployed during hours of attendance for various religious services. We're currently, with the Office of Operations and under the leadership also of Mr. Fred Booker from our Community Relations section, surveying those houses that have an interest to be a partner with us, and we intend to pursue. There are limited funds with this, but we think that every little bit will help as we work our efforts together to collectively ensure the holiday season, the high holidays, as well as other religious observances are safe, and the parishioners are able to come and go with their freedoms and their safety safeguarded as much as possible.
Thank you, Chief. And if I could just add to that, the public should know that the Department of Homeland Security has an opportunity, and that window of opportunity is still open for their grant services or their grant funding to enhance security as well.
And thank you, and certainly I want to recognize the Jewish Federation, for instance, as one institution that is shepherding those efforts on behalf of their membership as well. And I'm sure that there's other religious organizations similarly situated. Anyone who needs information about that, we certainly ask that they contact us, and we'll be happy to focus them in the direction of the appropriate place to apply.
Thank you, Chief. My last comment is regarding the Organized Retail Theft Task Force. And just a question, again, with 346 arrests and 20 firearms being seized, is there going to be any effort to share that information? I'm often asked about that activity, particularly as the holidays are coming up, and it seems like every time we have a media event that highlights the latest smash and grab, people seem to think that nothing's going on or nothing's happening.
Well, we will continue to provide that information, and perhaps we can update it. I've got Captain Lopez is here from a Commercial Crimes Division, and we will stress again, how do we publish this information? I will say a bit of Achilles heel. About 3 weeks ago, I remarked how they were down 57%. It was a Thanksgiving weekend, only to have 3 strikes. And so I felt like I should just not talk about this so much. But we are seeing an impact. We do believe that this investigative work and the resulting identification and arrest of individuals, that these many times are serial individuals, and that we are having a exponential impact on other events by deterring them, by them being in custody.
Okay, thank you, Chief. And with that, we'll go to item 2 on the agenda, public comment.
Okay, the first speaker is Jonathan Foster.
Hello, Jonathan Foster. I don't know if I'm going to be as effective as I'd like to be, but, I still think that it's 98% excellent service that the LAPD puts out. There's this 2% of gross things that are going on, and it's real gross. Okay, and I'm going to speak to that stuff. And I'm not saying this to hurt you, I'm saying this to help you. Getting officers out of this horrible outcome from answering these calls, and then there becomes these preventable deaths. I call them preventables that can be prevented. This leads to officer protected, you see. That's what I came here for, partly. This protects each suspect, though, that only real threats end up dead. This is awful, though. Okay, so this is what it sounded like with Jessica Brown.
Hey! Drop the pipe! Drop the pipe! Ma'am, drop the pipe!
That was
Drop
the
pipe!
non-lethal,
Ma'am, drop the pipe!
and those are the shots that killed her. And this was preventable from what I've seen. And what was told to me was that the budget is so big that you guys could have done something else, and I partially agree. But one of the things that a lot of people that are black are enduring is the systemic racism. This is Ronald Reagan using the monkey word about black people from Africa. Listen to this. It's hard to hear. Yeah, you can get that on YouTube. He did use this word. Nori Martinez used this word. Kevin DeLeon said nothing about it. Gil Cedillo said that these conversations happen all over the city. This is really sick, okay? And the amount of dead is confounding all leadership performance. So one of the things I was going to talk about is this guy's got 5 years. He's getting $1.2 million for his 5 years. But a lot of people, there may be a Green Beret on the LAPD. There might have been in the past. This is Roy Benavides. He was asked 100 times, would he do what he's done as a Green Beret? Would you do it over again? You know what he said? He said, in my 25 years in the military, I feel like I've been overpaid for my service to my country. There'll never be enough paper to print the money, nor enough gold in Fort Knox for me to have, to keep me from doing what I did. I'm proud to be an American. And they start clapping. I'm even proud. And they stop, and he goes, I'm even prouder that I earned the privilege to wear the Green Beret. It seems so unlike what happened with you and Eric Moore. Or Eric, the toilet mayor, Eric Garcetti, and your $1 million. It's really upsetting.
Thank you.
How much people are.
Okay, and on Zoom, we have Matios Cadane.
This is Matios.
Yes, Matios. Go ahead, 3 minutes.
This is Matios Guidano with the Stop LAPD Spine Coalition. I want to first touch on Chief Moore saying the LAPD is addressing protests in a neutral manner. And that's such a sham, because we know police chiefs have attended private dinners with the Simon Wiesenthal Center for years. We know the ADL has done trainings for the LAPD, probably still does trainings for the LAPD. And these are openly Zionist institutions, openly Zionist organizations. And so how could this department possibly be neutral when you send your officers to so-called Israel to be trained, when you use Israeli surveillance tech, when the president of this board is a visiting professor at the Institute of Counterterrorism in so-called Israel? So it's just a sham. And I just want to point out that lie. And on this kind of narrative about, the LAPD's response to vulnerable communities, unhoused communities being killed by someone who probably latched on to the dehumanizing language the city uses to talk about unhoused communities. It's gross. I don't understand how we can look at a situation like this and have Chief Moore praise technology, to advocate for more technology. It's gross, but it's not surprising. It's actually in line with how this department has always used tragedy to get new toys, right? Most recently, Moore uplifted the acquisition of new tasers as a solution to officers killing community members. Similarly, these tragic murders of unhoused peoples are being referenced in relation to seeking, not in relation to seeking housing solutions, but are being referenced in expanding surveillance capabilities and in praising the city of Beverly Hills, in identifying that as a model of what the LAPD should be, a real surveillance state, which it already is, but expanding that. And this fear mongering that we're kind of hearing around these murders, around organized retail theft task force, they're a seasonal occurrence. It's a budget season occurrence, right? Moore and the LAPD need to fear monger to make sure their resources are expanded. Briggs even jumped in, resuscitating that narrative about follow home robberies that we thought was tired and gone. But this is all in service of surveillance technologies that come with a hefty price tag, and we see that on the agenda. We see 2.8 mil. A 2.8 mil contract with Peregrine Systems. We see 1.3 mil for video integration. We see 7.8 mil for ALPR expansion. That's on top of a contract the city already has with Motorola Solutions. We see 1.3 mil for integration of a mobile command center. And, this is all money that could be spent in housing people, right? These are resources that are being extracted from the community. And we know these surveillance technologies like ALPRs don't prevent crime. We do know that they lead to potentially deadly situations, like in 2021 when Ernest Simon Jr., a Black man and a Disney employee, was held at gunpoint by multiple officers for driving a company van that LAPD believed was stolen. LAPD said it was due to ALPRs. We also know that this information is shared to target undocumented community members. It goes to fusion centers. It's shared with DHS. So this is all a sham. Yeah, I yield my time.
Thank you. The next speaker, Audrey George.
Well, first of all, I echo and agree and promote everything that Matios just said. So thank you, Matios. I believe you lied, Chief Moore. I can't believe that that you've read reports about that heroic officer that talked to that poor disturbed woman for 35 minutes trying to de-escalate, even though he's probably former military and doesn't know shit about de-escalating. I can't believe you read a report all about that and don't know if he called the SMART team. That just, let's just say he didn't call the SMART team. That your timeline about all that happened the past week or so sort of is hard to follow, but were you protecting and serving, were your cops protecting and serving when within a 40-hour period they shot 3 people in separate incidents? Is that protecting and serving? To date, this year, 34 shootings is the number that I'm being provided with, 16 of which were fatal. 5 people killed in custody. Is that, Mr. Suthers, Commissioner Suthers, is that not breaking the rules? You start out every meeting with the rules that are so stupid in a situation where everything is always peaceful. And no, we can't drink our water in here. We can't bring it in. We can't stand up if we have children. We probably can't wear purple, I don't know. But you don't hold the cops to rules such as not killing people with edged weapons or cell phones or bike tools. You have these cops who you want to train in Israel to get the Israeli Defense Force to show them how to de-escalate. They're doing such a great job of that. And yet you don't consider that they should be held to rules like of engagement that make sense. Why would you let your cops kill so many people in the middle of a mental health crisis? Why would you let them shoot at people with edged weapons? There's so many other ways to handle these situations. Why do you use these things like the killing of houseless people to just use them as an excuse to increase your surveillance technology and the tools that you provide your cops with? Now, just to go back to the standard thing, change the fucking dates of these meetings. I wanted to be at City Council today. It's just, why? Why? And why?
Ma'am, thank you very much. Madam Speaker, please read the name of the next speaker.
On Zoom, we have Philip Tabby. Philip Tabby.
All items and where's Kalanche? Yeah. A couple of weeks ago, this commission found the killing of Takar Smith out of policy. Takar did not need to die. But Mike, let me refresh your memory on something. In a lawsuit I'm reading, Captain Johnny Smith was incident commander here at Foothill on a similar situation where SWAT was called in. However, Smith made a very wise call that day. Instead of going in after this person who was not a threat to anyone, just like Takar Smith, the incident commander, Captain Smith, decided to tactically disengage. He knew that if they went in after him, they would shoot this guy. At this same incident, a particular member of SWAT told Captain Johnny Smith, who was remainder of the incident commander on scene, to think about his career survival if he did not let that SWAT enter. Ultimately, the suspect ended up surrendering and no one was shot or killed that day. Was Smith promoted? Nope. But that commander who told Johnny to consider career survival if SWAT wasn't allowed to enter, he got promoted. He got promoted even after speaking at a Zoom meeting with 100 command officers and still disagreed with Captain Smith's decision, even though the suspect surrendered that day. What kind of message are you sending, Mike, when you promote people with these kind of ethics? Mike, you send mixed messages. Your bad decisions and horrible leadership must be why the Command Officer Association met with Mayor Karen Bass recently, giving you horrible remarks. This reminds me of the survey done where almost 90% of command staff gave you a vote of no confidence. What did you do with that survey? You suppressed it, Mike. Go ahead, fact check me. Go back to the SWAT. Now back to the SWAT situation where Smith decided to tactically stand down. You demoted him. He's the same captain who warned you about the body-worn situation. Mike, I also speak from experience. For 30 years, I've been giving back to my community, volunteering with Foothill Station LAPD. But you had the same captain, Marco Lozano, who yelled and cursed at a citizen in his uniform in a city car during a Zoom CPAB meeting, and it's online for you to see. You had that same captain relieve me of my duties as a volunteer with no reason given. But you take Lozano out to pizza and demote Smith for speaking truth to power, just like I did. Right about now, you're probably sipping your water and giving T-Fank nervous remarks. I'm going to tell you the same thing you told my community. Don't have a pity party. LA Times, Police Commission, give me a call. We could chat. Challenge what I'm saying. God bless the LAPD.
The next speaker was Michelle Dumont.
I'd like to start out by supporting both what Mateos and Audrey had to say. In addition to the time of this meeting, it is disgusting that a civilian oversight committee, which this is supposed to be, but it's really not, is held at police headquarters where it's supposed to be overseeing the police department. That's a contradiction. It shouldn't be happening. Not at all. Okay. All these shootings. Moore is happy to tell you that violent crime is up because then he can get more officers, right? He can get more money. Violent crime is up in more white, affluent areas. Put your energies there. Stop surveilling people of color and stop surveilling poorer people. Let money go to house people so they don't get killed on the streets and not spent chasing after the people who end up killing them. This is disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. I had one good experience of the LAPD in the last month or so. You know what it was? I was at a protest in Hollywood. They stayed away. The only good police are the police who don't show up. That was a wonderful event. Nothing bad happened. We didn't need them. We didn't want them. But thankfully, they at least stayed at a distance. The other thing that I heard today that's absolutely disgusting, you're not willing to protect synagogues and mosques unless they go get a grant so that your officers can be paid overtime. That's what that money's going to go to, is overtime for those officers. You're not willing to put the billions of dollars of resources into protecting those institutions. Just say it flat out. You want them to fund their own protection. This is disgusting. Didn't you hear what he said? I mean, what more has to be said? Stop the expansion. Stop the technology that's going out, because it's only going to be used to surveil people of color and poor neighborhoods. It's not going to be used in Granada Hills. It's not going to be used in Brentwood. It's not going to be used in Bel Air. Give it up, folks. It's not working, and he's going to always want to expand any technology you give him. He's not going to ever be judicious about it, and it's always going to be hurtful to people.
Thank you for your comment. Madam Secretary, next speaker.
Via Zoom, we have Paula Minor.
Can you hear me?
Yes, 3 minutes.
Yeah. 3 minutes, yes, thank you. This is Paula Minor from Black Lives Matter LA, and I'm commenting on something that happened at the last meeting, November 21st. At that meeting, the annual LAPD budget was on the agenda for approval by the commission. This was a blatant example of rubber stamping that we've been criticizing this commission for decades. The LAPD budget is voluminous. It's taking over 50% of the city's discretionary funds, which we disagree with, but the nearly 600-page document was given to the commission on the Friday preceding their Tuesday meeting. They're expected to approve it on Tuesday with very little time for any kind of detailed review. When one commissioner, the one who's been on the commission the longest with therefore the longest commission experience, asked for more time for review and analysis of the budget, Chief Moore said, "Oh no, there's not time. We have to meet the schedule. We don't want to be late." This is clearly an example of poor management. The city budget schedule occurs every year. That information is given to city departments early. It is the same. If Chief Moore wanted this commission to really review and analyze the budget, they would have scheduled their work to give the commission more time. It is an example of Chief Moore expecting rubber stamping, and for this commission to say, yeah, we will do the rubber stamping for you. We are highly upset with this. In addition to the schedule, we also believe that the budget should have time for the community, for the people within the city to have some input and some review before it is submitted. So again, this commission continues its rubber stamping, continues to be an embarrassment. When we look in the city charter and read what your responsibilities are, and we are appalled, and it must change. I yield my time.
Thank you. The next speaker, Zach S.
2 weeks ago, this meeting got shut down, and if memory serves, it was because Commissioner Suthers wouldn't take the comments of 3 last people who came down to speak. If the goal is to save time in these meetings, Commissioner Suthers, it's difficult to see why you won't just let that happen instead of forcing the whole thing to shut down, but I digress. Commissioners, you all filed out. We all stood here for a bit. One of the officers who was in the room until recently, Officer Hernandez, was standing right here extremely close to a woman who was attending the meeting, almost touching her, certainly right up in her physical proximity. I have video if you would be interested in seeing that. Then we started leaving. One of your officers, Polanco, Chief Moore, who I don't see here today, started touching me and then pushing me on my way out of the room. I said, "Why are you touching me?" And he said, "Because you pushed me and I know our use of force policy." That was a lie. I know it's my word against Officer Polanco's, but I don't come down here to push cops. I will speak angrily from this podium and call Hernandez a creep for standing so close to that young woman and call Polanco a liar and a bully, but I don't come down here to push cops. So we say that this meeting should be held somewhere besides LAPD headquarters. And part of that is because when we're here, Moore's officers feel maximally empowered to engage in this gross and abusive behavior. It's impossible to prove the counterfactual, but I think his officers would feel less empowered to push people around if these meetings were out in the community. Frankly, Southers, I think this setting makes you feel more empowered to arbitrarily make those calls. This week, everybody who came down gets to talk. This week, everybody doesn't, for reasons that are opaque to those of us in the community whose voice in police affairs you purport to be on your website. It's also so interesting that when you leave, commissioners, the true colors of the officers in this room come out, and we start seeing the creepy physical proximity, the pushing, the lying. That is this whole charade in a nutshell. The five of you, I am including Kalanche, even though she's not here, provide a veneer of legitimacy, but the institution underneath, as soon as you're gone, is rotten. Last meeting, using minutes that could have been used for more public comment, we heard a lot of talk and follow-up questions about perfume theft. Commissioners, you are the human perfume that is insufficient to mask the stench of this putrid institution. Commissioner Southers, 2 weeks ago, you told Hamid Khan you were going to look into the Suspicious Activity Reporting Program audit. Can we get a follow-up? When are we going to hear more about that, or is it just going to slip through the cracks? Mark Smith, aren't you supposed to perform that audit annually? Why hasn't it been happening? Isn't your whole role to be the detail-oriented guy? And if so, why does your name plaque say Django Sibley? This job and this commission are self-selecting. Dozens of people shot by this department, tens killed. Shame on all of you.
Thank you.
The next speaker via Zoom, Steve Rogers. Steve
Good morning.
Rogers. Okay, 3 minutes, please.
Yes, first I'd like to say happy Thanksgiving after the holiday. I want to thank all the officers out there that put their lives on the line on a daily basis. And thanks be to God, because every day should be Thanksgiving. And Chief, I want to say that your report was pretty good today. And I appreciated your report on the murders of the what you call the houseless community. But you didn't mention the full name of the suspect, who was a convicted felon. That wasn't mentioned either. Jared Joseph Powell and San Dimas did an excellent job of solving a murder in their community, and which was a follow-home robbery. And you use the word senseless to describe the murder. I call it evil. I hear the word senseless used quite often, but what we're dealing with is evil. I don't know the full story on the suspect. I think more information will come out. But due to the surveillance video system, that case was solved. Good cooperation between agencies. That's good to see. The community is safer. Now, should he have been even out and about, or should he have been incarcerated? I don't know his full record, but that would be interesting to know. Because sometimes it's not a criminal justice system, it's a criminal injustice system. And then we have more victims because there are no consequences for the serious crimes that are committed. And speaking of consequences, how many people have been arrested at police commission meetings for disrupting a public meeting, 403 PC, and misdemeanor? I've continually called for that. The president of the police commission gives one warning multiple times. You have to educate, warn, and then make an arrest. Clearing the room of all people is unfair to everyone. We had one disruption that I had to wait 20 minutes or so before I had a chance to actually re-engage and speak. I was cut off by about a minute. Let's have the same standard for everybody. Certain people seem to be tolerated and get more time. The public comment should be 3 minutes at a maximum for every person. We have to have objective, fair standards that are enforced. That's key. Neighborhood watches, where are they? Can you list them on the website? And speaking of the website really needs to be updated. The arrest of Jared Joseph Powell in the multiple murders isn't even on the website. put his picture on there, let people see it. And so can somebody keep an eye on that website? Again, I support the police. However, there needs to be improvement. And when you need improvement, that's what I'm trying to encourage. God bless the LAPD. Thank you all for your service, and let's enforce the law equally. And I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
The next speaker, please, Megan.
If Steve Rogers is so hyped on following the rules, he should refrain from talking about other speakers, which he does on a regular basis. I saw a phrase on BLM's Twitter page, which hit home as I was considering what to speak to you about this morning. Selective humanity. It really sums up the absolute mindfuck of speaking to this commission week after week. I look at you. You are human beings with children and parents and brothers and sisters. And because of that, there's something in me that thinks if I can just find the right words, these people who have an enormous amount of power will help. They'll agree that the never-ending stream of abuse and murder which comes from this police department is unacceptable. They'll agree that we need more money for housing and healthcare, not more money for a department which kills our citizens and sucks the money out of the budget to buy more guns, drones, bombs, and fund outrageous salaries for officers who don't even live here. They will use their enormous power to help, surely. And then you sit there, stone-faced, you don't do anything. Week after week, year after year, the faces change, but the result doesn't. It just gets worse. The most murderous police department in the country, the most surveilled city in the nation. You literally do nothing. You don't even ask him tough questions, let alone hold him accountable. It's mind-blowing. It's crazy-making. But that phrase helps me make sense of it. It helps me understand selective humanity. You're not the people who are primarily impacted by it. You and your kids, your siblings, your friends, your property is safe for now. It's why your only question are about mall shoppers and the fucking robberies. And as Camille put it, you're more horrified about the theft of Nike sneakers than you are about the theft of millions in wages by those same store owners. Deadliest police department in the country, highest rate of incarceration, 46,000 homeless people. Those are real problems. But to do something about those problems would risk your positions. It would risk your power and your social standing and possibly your jobs. So you dehumanize the people that it does impact. Collateral damage, necessary evil, their fault. Just the way the world works. Unfortunate. It feels familiar, doesn't it? That same selective humanity is currently enabling the genocide of thousands of Palestinians, carried out by the same military who comes here to train LAPD officers. I say this as someone who has also selectively humanized people and still does. I'm really grateful to Black Lives Matter, Stop LAPD Spying, and White People for Black Lives for their education and advocacy, which has helped me to expand my definition.
Thank you for your comment. Madam Speaker, next speaker.
Via Zoom, we have Andrew Gravener.
All right, all items.
Go ahead, 3 minutes.
All right, starting off with the chief's report. The chief's report should be limited to 3 minutes at every meeting. If the chief's report exceeds 3 minutes, we should be able to match whatever the time the chief took today. The chief took longer than usual, like 22 minutes. I counted. That does not include the time where the commissioners asked him a bunch of softball questions just to make it look like they're doing something while they're really not. So that's just the amount of time the chief was just talking. See, the LAPD still shooting people. Most murderous police department in the country, I think. It seems like I thought I heard the chief mention that the officers decided that using a fire extinguisher was a acceptable use of like fire extinguishers are extremely dangerous. They should not be using fire extinguishers on humans. on people. They're still shooting dogs. They're just violent. Everywhere they go, they're bringing their violence with them. Let's see. We have the consent agenda. We have requests for phlebotomist or whatever. We don't know on that. We have the organized retail theft prevention grant. Definitely no on that. No grants. Vote no on that. We have the Versnick Science Improvement Grant. No on that. $2,500 donation gift cards for the Heroes and Helpers event. Definitely no on that. One where they the cops go around and take kids holiday shopping, get the cops away from the kids. We have a $3,600 holiday party. No on that. $15,000 for dinner, for cops, dinner and clothes, for them to go run in the desert, hope and then pass out because running in the hot desert for miles and miles is a really bad idea. Definitely no on that. Because then they're gonna have to be airlifted to the hospital on taxpayer dollars. Definitely no on that. So I filed a report about the cops illegally preventing us from observing a violent arrest at City Hall, and I provided video, and you're claiming it didn't happen. It definitely happened. You're absolutely lying by saying it didn't.
The next speaker, Daisy Orem.
Good morning. Hi, everyone. My name is Daisy. Some of you guys already know me because I was the woman that was uploaded to a virtual reality simulation against my will 2 years ago. It's called VBS 3, Voice to Skull and Remote Communication Technology. Somebody that was on the development team sent me the technology and sent me the patents for the technology. There's a man named Mr. Mater. His niece is Kate Mater. She was the election campaign manager for Eleni Koulounakis, who was the lieutenant governor. You guys have been using this technology on people. You have to have a chemical in your body for it to work on you, or there's something blasted above your home. There's drones above our house. They've snuck into my apartment. We've gotten several reports from the public health department about the water supply and even bodies in the water to get this technology to work. I've been to the police several times. I have all my reports. I have all the information about this technology and how it was used on me when I first lived in Atlanta, and Atlanta blew up in gunfire with people using this technology. LA is blowing up. Police officers are dying. A bunch is going on because they're using this technology, and the police are using it to organize arrests, illegal arrest, organize hits, organize robberies, and it's so out of control. I have it recorded, blasting off of my ears and blasting off of my body, where they're screaming, "You black bitch, you nigger, you ape," all day. It's a group of white supremacists that have started using this on black and brown people to harass them. I'm wondering if the police are going to do anything about this, given the fact that it's in the media now. Because somebody, when I said that somebody had sent me the link for the technology, it's easy to download and easy to access. And I have another friend, Nelsie Bautista, in Oakland, and she was working on Bernie Sanders' campaign. They used this on her to see who the campaign funders were and everything else, and it makes you extremely sick. I'm wondering, why is the police allowing this? And then I complained about it, and then you guys arrested me, though. But after I complained about it, didn't look into it, never got a call from the detective, had all the links ready, even the software right in front of me, never called back, never heard anything about it, because the police are using it to start chaos and using it on activists and hacking people's computer and using overlay systems as well too. I wanted to talk about all these different technologies that I got a catalog of and how it's being used to harm the public, because I do know Mr. Moore and other people, you guys are under federal watch for the use of this technology and how it went buck wild in LA. And I do think that it needs to be handled, and the police commission shouldn't look at this lightly. I also wanted to talk about what's been happening with victim of a crime and other LA City departments and how they've been using this technology. So let's say, for instance, I come in here, Mr. Moore sees me, he starts letting people know in the technology, you swallow a pill and you can use it with your friends so that if your phone gets tapped by the feds, they won't be able to see it. But it does record everything and the feds have access to that. But it's like neural monitoring. It's so disgusting and so out of control and so delusional. I would like for the Inspector General to investigate this immediately and to get this turned off because I know how to get it turned off. It's being ran from some of the regional centers, but more or less you just need to have like a specific RFID device next to you, one of those things that like tracks phones and tracks cars, and then you can attach it to somebody's energy field because your energy field is just a substance. So I want to talk about that, and I want that off of me now because it's causing a bunch of chaos and people keep on getting killed because they keep on
Ma'am,
putting me
thank you,
in it.
thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Chief.
Miss, if I could, the sergeant right back there at the door, she will help you. She'll take your information. I'm going to have you talk with her, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Hamid Khan.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, 3 minutes.
Okay, all items. Okay, so a bunch of things have already been said, and just echoing Martius Kadani's comments about that how when it's budget time, how things get sensationalized and as if like just that this is something so unique that is going on. Just and again going back to Paula Minor's comment that you have record increase in budget, and there's only one conversation, and that budget is rubber stamped and then approved, where LAPD is asking for $238 million, and this is going to be, when you add the other liabilities of pensions and everything else, we're looking at close to almost $4 billion package that ultimately on top of federal grants and everything else. So this is the level of intentionality, and this is the level of really having an engaged conversation and doing the critical analysis that this body is supposed to do. So, but we do recognize that that's your function is as a shock absorber, and to sustain and just kind of protect the department as much as possible from expose and all the violence that they commit. Which brings me to 3C, that how an item is tucked into consent items, which is an ask to the tune of $15.1 million, and that's where the real thing lies. That here we go again, same thing that we saw. We have Justice Security Strategies getting hundreds and $1,000s. Craig Uchida. We saw what happened with Operation Laser. Here we go again, that just building it supposedly on the model of Operation Greenlight in Detroit, which in your documents you also speak about its success, but you completely fail to mention that what the National Institute of Justice has come out with a study itself. And the latest study they did on the Detroit Project Greenlight was on October 18, 2022. And the summary of that thing is that they have given it a rating of no effects. NOEFFECTS. Once again, I say no effects. And no effects rating implies, and this is their document, and I quote, a no effects rating implies that implementing the program is unlikely to result in the intended outcome and may result in negative outcome. And we know what these negative outcomes are going to be. This is not even just the expansion of the police state, where you have more license plate readers, where you have more cameras, when you just the facial recognition technology, and then of course the real-time crime center operations, which are going to be monitoring every move. And let's not forget something that Zach Sherman lifted on the suspicious activity reporting program, that watching the movement, surveillance and behavioral surveillance becomes primary. So who's going to go into those databases? Who's going to be traced and tracked? And that's exactly what Detroit Free Press called it, trace and track.
Speaker ending in 1264.
Hello?
Yes. You're on. 3 minutes.
Yeah, yes, please. I was talking, I was in at home, and we started to have a problem with a neighbor playing loud music. This is talking about the Foothill Division here. Neighbor continued to play loud music until 2 in the morning. I was calling constantly. I have waited for 3 hours and still nobody showed up. They had kids playing outside. So I mentioned to the dispatch operator, hey, they have kids playing at 2 in the morning outside. Oh, she says, oh, there's nothing wrong with that. Of course, how can that nothing be wrong with that? I mean, how can a employee tell me that there's nothing wrong with that? That's like child abuse. I mean, obviously you have your kid out there at 2 in the morning and these people blasting music. And you don't understand how when you're deprived of sleep, how that affects you, your health wise, and how that affects your cognitive dissonance and your cognitive abilities on the road. And I don't think the police are taking this into account. I believe that they're actually working against me. I mean, they obviously were upset at me for some reason. I have no idea, but for 3 hours and nobody shows up, and I was calling constantly, that is unacceptable service. And we pay property taxes here, and that should be something. But yet you allow a lot of things to go on in our neighborhoods that aren't acceptable. I mean, we can't have a police department working against us. I work with the police department. I try to be a good person and report things when I see them, but it doesn't seem to have any effect on what's going on in my neighborhood. They're actually seem to be having more conversations with drug dealers who I suspect is drug dealers, let's put it that way, in my neighborhood. So I have no idea what their relationship is, but it seems to be that they seem to be giving them more attention than they do the people who are actually trying to help their community instead of destroy it. And I wanted to mention one thing about the incident that happened over at the church and the saint of the worst of the worst, I call it. I've asked for a supervisor, and a supervisor did not come out. He thought it was okay to give me a call. So is this what you're doing? You're just calling in your service now? No, we really need to do something, Chief. I mean, they obviously don't want to communicate. They don't seem to. I mean, I've almost never seen my slow have.
Thank you. The next speaker, Jamie. Jamie, are you there?
All items.
Thank you.
This week, you motherfuckers are reviewing a request for LAPD to retroactively apply for and receive over $138,000 in grant funding from the US DOJ to help fund a program to increase the scope and variety of latent print evidence that can be processed. Seriously? We're still pretending that the sham science of fingerprinting is reliable enough to be used to arrest suspects? FYI, fingerprints were first used as a method to identify individuals in 200 BC, when Babylonian royalty dipped their hands in ink to sign their documents, and the technology has not improved substantially at all since that time. As proven by the scores of peer-reviewed, independently produced reports which have been released by universities and scientific institutions regularly over the last 20 years, fingerprints cannot reliably be matched to the correct person. The technology is not infallibly accurate. The method is fundamentally flawed. The national error rate for fingerprint identification averages 20%. Everywhere except on Law & Order and in Agatha Christie and on fucking Paw Patrol. And the major obvious reason for this abysmal error rate is that latent prints from crime scenes are only ever run against the backlog of prints of people who have already been arrested by LAPD, which enables you motherfuckers to arbitrarily choose whoever the fuck you want to bring in and then put away. Latent print analysis further empowers LAPD to continue to keep disposing of Black, brown, unhoused, and poor people without the annoying, irrelevant interference of information such as whether or not they committed a crime. As one of the citizens whose voices you allegedly represent, I am hereby stating my recommendation that the grant application not be submitted. And obviously, it's not like I think that 138 grand is doing any good sitting in the coffers of the federal Department of Justice. It's more that I object to the fact that this represents yet another instance of LAPD failing upward, accruing yet more funding as a reward for their failure to produce anything remotely resembling protection or service for anybody in LA except the cops themselves. And this money, which represents a repulsive theft of community resources stolen in this instance from the American people at large rather than just the people of LA, is literally better off being burned than going into Michael Moore's pockets. His reign of terror over the city needs to end today. He does not need some shiny, expensive, useless new machinery that will allow him to dispose of Black people with yet more authority and ease. There is no number of so-called fatal officer-involved shootings, which are known to people with souls and consciences as murders, that is acceptable. There is no number of officer shootings that is acceptable. And if you motherfuckers really do represent the citizens of this city, then you will recommend today that Mayor Bass fire Chief Moore. I'll yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. This concludes our public comment period. Before we move on to item number 3, the consent agenda items, I just remind everyone that's here and that's watching that we will be in the community on January 23rd in South Bureau. The locations to be determined. It will not be held in the morning. It will not be held in the police station. So we'll move on to item number 3, consent agenda item A. Any questions or comments on A? Anyone? So, Chief, I have one question for item agenda 3A. Excuse me, we are on a new agenda item. You are disrupting the meeting. Ma'am, you in the yellow sweatshirt may now leave the room. You've been warned. You may now leave the room. Now. Thank you.
President Suthers, what item are we on?
We're on item 3A, the supplemental police account third quarterly report.
So we're taking that one.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Any questions?
I have no questions.
Chief, I do have one question on this particular agenda item. I noticed that, hang on one second here. In the month of September, we had 63,000 fentanyl pills seized. That's a 66% of the entire amount for the year. And I just wanted to ask, what do we attribute that significant increase in that 1 month and that number for the report that's submitted?
Commissioner, I will say that, the seizure of narcotics and arrests are not, they ebb and flow, meaning that they are episodic based on investigations. But what I will say in the backdrop is that the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of seizures of fentanyl is an ongoing challenge for us as an agency and across American policing. It's the number one killer of individuals 17 to 35 years of age, drug overdoses being fentanyl. So I don't have a particular case in that. We can look up to see what seizure that was, but we also will say that we're a member of the High Intensity Drug Task Force, HIDTA. We lead the country, this region, HIDTA's task force, leads the country in its investigation. Part of that, I think, is an absolute tribute to the men and women that work that task force with our federal partners, but also the fact that this region serves as a hub, unfortunately, for so much of the narcotic trafficking in America. So the intersections there occur more frequently here, in part because of the supply.
Thank you, Chief. I just thought this perhaps was one particular search warrant that yielded this quantity, and I was just curious about what it might be.
We'll circle back with that one incident, but unfortunately, fortunately, I'll say that these seizures are regular and ongoing. The unfortunate part about that is we do think we're only getting a small portion of the overall trafficking amount.
Thank you. Any other commissioners with questions or comments on this particular agenda item? Okay. With that, I would move that we approve the department's report and transmit to the City Council. Is there a second?
I second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. I'll do this one at a time. We've got A through F. Are there any questions or comments on item B? Seeing none, I would move that we approve the department's report for item 3B. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. I have a question on item C. Is there anyone else with a question on item 3C? No. Okay. So Chief, item 3C is the grant application and award for the state budget for the Organized Retail Theft Prevention Grant.
And Commissioner, we've got a couple of leads here approaching. Not yet clear what the question might be, so we want to have the appropriate subject matter experts at the table.
Thank you for doing that. It's a simple one, I think. I noticed in your quarterly, on page 2 of 3, under item 5, which is the reporting requirements, it states here that you're going to have quarterly progress report periods, and then you've got a deadline date on the right that says February 14, 2024. My question is, would it be possible to have these quarterly reports shared with the Board of Police Commissioners, either to the board or presented in a BOPC meeting each quarter, so we can keep track of this particular activity?
Absolutely, and for clarity, for the record, it's February 15th, 2024.
I'm sorry, February 15, 2024. Okay.
Absolutely, we'll be happy to, the Commission's desire. I would suggest if it is a matter before the entire Commission, I don't know that the time frame works well. I might suggest the Executive Committee first.
Okay.
Just knowing that the first quarter ends December 31st, the report is due to the organization 6 weeks later, which by calendaring and scheduling and so forth can get kind of tight.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, that was the difficult question.
So is it the desire of the Commission then for us to visit the Executive Committee with those reports?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Does that mean that the rest of us don't get to see it, or will it be presented to us?
If I could make a recommendation, I would recommend on a semi-annual basis, Commissioner, that we provide you an update, and that's a 3-year grant. And certainly also welcome you to inquire, absent Brown Act issues, make inquiries as to the status of this investigation, status of this initiative. This is a remarkable initiative for us.
Yeah, I think twice a year would be great to the commission.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll have the first report due to you in the first 6 months of this, and that will be reflective ending June 30th. So we'll have it here by the middle of July.
Okay, thank you. So I'd make a motion that we approve the department's report and transmit concurrently to the mayor and city council. Is there a second?
Second.
It's moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Are there any questions on items 3D, E, or F? Okay. So hearing none, some of these are a little bit different, so I'll take them one at a time. 3D, I move that we approve the department's report and transmit concurrently to the mayor and city council. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. 3E, I move that we approve the department's report and accept the donation. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 3F, I move that we approve the department's report and accept the donations. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All in motion.
Yes,
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We will now move on to item number 4, regular agenda items. It's the department's report on makeup, which is revised, and visible tattoos and branding. We have Director Rhodes and Captain Patillo. Welcome. I'm sorry. Yeah, Captain Patillo.
Good morning, members of the Police Commission, Chief Moore, Mr. Inspector General, Mr. City Attorney, and Mr. Teefank. I am Captain Robin Patillo of Recruitment and Employment Division, and I'm here with Director Elizabeth Rhodes of Office of Constitutional Policing and Policy to briefly discuss the revised department policy on makeup and visible tattoos. The revisions to the policy were slight. It now specifically details how tattoos on the hands, neck, and behind the ears must be covered. Tattoos on the face are not permitted. However, the policy now addresses permanent makeup as an exception. The policy on tattoos continues to require that officers cover all tattoos by means listed in the policy. As a recruitment captain, I've noted that tattoos on candidates have become more prevalent. In the last 6 months, 46% of all recruits hired had some type of tattoo. 30% were female, 70% were male. All tattoos on police officer candidates are photographed and evaluated on a case-by-case basis for content, which includes nexus to gangs, extremism, or criminal activity, and location on the person, and if they may be reasonably covered. Recently, I've evaluated 40 candidates who were early in the hiring process to determine if their tattoos were too extensive for them to continue in the hiring process. 16 of them had tattoos that were too extensive to be reasonably covered within the prior or new policy. These 16 were referred to candidate advisors who will discuss tattoo removal with them as an option. It is unknown how many potential candidates have decided not to apply due to the policy prohibiting exposed tattoos. However, most local large police departments have similar policies which require the covering of tattoos. That concludes my presentation, and I'm ready for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Captain. I will go to Commissioner Kalanche. Any questions or comments?
Thank you. Just a quick question. Of these 16 that you felt maybe would not be fit based on our policies, like were there tattoos, where were they located? Like,
Several that I could think of had extensive tattoos on covering like a large portion of the neck, behind ears, covering entire hands. So it was a little more than what would be acceptably covered by a bandage or other means.
got it. That's it.
Commissioner Briggs?
Thank you. Captain, my question, given this topic, is this. We've all read about what has happened in the LA County Sheriff's Department, particularly with respect to the question of whether or not there's internal gangs and deputies who belong to those gangs and deputies who then go out and obtain tattoos. So your report seems to be focused on individuals who are seeking to become a police officer, and you note that they have tattoos and you document them. What about individuals who are already officers and then go out and get particular tattoos? Are you made aware of that? Do you document it? And if so, have you determined or found whether or not any officers have similar tattoos
I have not
after
made aware.
having joined the department?
Post-hire, I am not made aware of any tattoos, nor do I know of any mechanism where an officer would notify the department, other than if somebody observed something and perhaps told a supervisor.
So, go ahead, Director Rhodes.
So,
A couple of things in response to your question, Commissioner Briggs. One is this policy itself is content neutral. So it just talks about placement of tattoos and covering of tattoos. And that's done intentionally. We do, as I know you are well aware, have policies against gangs because there was a recent California state law with regard to that. And we have other policies about, any kind of tattoo that would be visible and problematic in terms of being a police officer. They would have to be covered um, based on this policy. But the ubiquitous nature of tattoos now was something that we thought the department should re-examine, and covering them applies not only to recruits, although Captain Patillo has talked to you about what she has seen in terms of that, and the desire to make sure that we are sort of up to date in terms of what people are doing, but it would also apply to those who are here. In terms of gangs or other things, we would have to deal with that in a mechanism other than this policy, and we certainly do have a policy against having gangs within the department.
Thank you, Director Rhodes. Thank you, President Suthers.
Vice President Shields.
Thank you, President Suthers. And Director Rhodes, to kind of piggyback on Commissioner Briggs's question, you mentioned a policy against gangs, but and I understand the policy means that you have to just cover up a tattoo, but if it is a tattoo that is, emblematic of extremism, whether it's a swastika or a 3% or some other kind of potentially linked to like hate groups, putting a bandage on it is not going to give enough, comfort to the community, just that they can't see it. If they ever know that this person has it, whether it's from photos posted on social media or others, that definitely impedes the department's opportunity and work. So how does the department handle those types of tattoos?
So it would handle social media postings based on the social media policy. It would handle gang tattoos based on the gang policy. So those content-based types things would be handled by those different policies. So again, this particular policy was intentionally content neutral. But and Captain Patillo can speak to extremist tattoos that we see if we see those in the beginning.
For all candidates, they have to declare their tattoos. They're photographed at length. Then the candidate must describe the meaning behind the tattoo. Then they're questioned by background investigators, and the imagery or words are compared to databases containing, imagery or anything that might be associated with hate groups. There's multiple levels of review in the background process for the tattoos itself, and someone with one of these aforementioned tattoos would be disqualified. I get a final look, so before I appoint a candidate, I'll review all the photographs, review the description, and review what the background investigator has to say about the tattoos. If it's something that I see that I think wouldn't be appropriate in the workplace, even if it's past all those levels, then I will kick it back and I won't hire the person.
And Commissioners, and then expand, because I believe both your inquiry as well as Commissioner Briggs are well-founded in the concern about law enforcement having potential members within its organizations that harbor extremist views. And the department is similarly concerned about that, and will investigate any allegation regarding such behavior, to include a person who has adorned themselves in a tattoo or marking that espouses those extremist views. While officers maintain the ability to express themselves in a manner consistent with the First Amendment, that privilege does not extend to the privilege of doing so while at the same time being a member of this organization. And so expression, whether it be in tattoos, branding, social media posts, verbal exchanges, or other communications that express extremist views, is conduct unbecoming a police officer, is contrary to the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics, is inconsistent with our core values, and the organization has and will take actions to remove those individuals from this department.
Thank you, Chief. And I understand that the department has more leeway at the outset when they're doing the hiring as opposed to with current officers. And I do agree with the Chief's indication that this would be conduct unbecoming. I would inquire as to whether there's an opportunity for you to work with the city attorney and assess other departments to see if they have any other policies that directly prohibit officers from, even existing officers on the force, from having any types of tattoos tied to extremist groups or hate groups.
We can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Shields. Commissioner Garcia.
Yeah, thank you. So, how can you share a little bit on how and what the process is to support officers in complying with these standards, and then what's the process or steps if they are not complying?
Well, I guess to assist officers in complying, we have training officers, we have this policy. It is clearer than our last policy, and we wanted to make sure that it was clearer so that those officers with tattoos, and there are more and more, that they would have an understanding of what was expected of them. So in that sense, I think this policy does some of that. Of course, policy can't do everything, and certainly there's a lot of training that goes on just by colleagues, and that can always be very helpful. When policies are broken or if there's an issue, we have a very robust complaint intake mechanism, and then that would be investigated.
And I'd add to that, Commissioner, that ongoing inspections, we have regular uniform inspections. Most recently, we've directed biannual as a matter of standards across all of operations, biweekly inspections of uniformed personnel because of grooming standards and some observations that we've seen more recently about some deterioration of that. Primarily facial hair, i.e. mustaches, but also the use of watch caps or uniform attire that looks to be marginal in the sense of the department's expectations. So a tattoo or a marking that was on a uniform officer that was visible and in the workplace, the action is we expect both the officer themselves to police that activity, as well as supervisors and command officers to initiate action to correct it, and in habitual misuse or abuse of this, to take that corrective action becomes disciplinary. And so it is a stick, but there's a carrot. The carrot is the policies that are also responsive to today, where we believe what's before you is an evolution of our policy that can accomplish the mission, which is that visible tattoos are not allowed or not a characteristic of a uniform officer or those in business attire in an on-duty fashion. We think that these minor modifications can accommodate what we see in the industry or in our society, which is a greater use or fashioning of tattoos by very capable, well-qualified individuals that adorn themselves with these markings. So we're trying to strike a balance here that remains an air of professionalism, that doesn't confuse the public as to what those markings might mean or interpret, and at the same time accommodates a workforce that is representative of our generations today.
Thank you. And if I can follow up, so in terms of the process for complying and then doing the inspections, would that be an opportunity where after one or two, and I understand this specific policy we're talking about is not content specific or doesn't cover content, but are there opportunities to say after one or two incidents, then it becomes a recordable and content specific step? In other words, just like the recruits where we take a picture of it, we record it, and does that, and again, it's not to catch anybody, it's to use and inform us when we evolve the policy and start looking at, well, what are those markings that are visible that are potentially being of issue, and how do we evolve the policy to potentially in the future allow for some of that, again, using it as information to inform future policy.
So we are a organization that has a significant portion of our organization is uniform, and the uniform requires a great deal amount of unity, and it has to be the same across the board, and that's what in part makes it a uniform. So in this policy, as you said, it's not content-based, but if someone violates it, that is showing a tattoo, not necessarily that would be hate speech or necessarily per se offensive, but it is a violation of this policy, and our policies require, or our policies, progressive discipline supports our policies. Now, that doesn't mean that, you know, any policy, if you disobey it once, is the least amount of discipline. But in terms of this policy, additional, repeated violations would increase whatever the penalty or what we do with it. So that the first violation may, depending on what it is, and again, I don't want to be too specific, because the issue with policies and the issue with discipline is you have to weigh everything on a case-by-case basis, as the captain indicated in terms of recruitment. But there, it would be perhaps a lesson or advice on how to cover tattoos. But when we see something that is a repeated action in violation of policy, of course, the discipline has to increase.
And I think, Commissioner, I think the nature of your inquiry is to understand how pervasive this is as to whether or not there's a rationale to reconsider the prevalence of this, and is it meeting that balance test of maintaining the public's trust and at the same time affording officers the ability to have self-expression in a manner that would not otherwise be offensive on first sight. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, just to simplify it more, if to the previous questions, like if we're seeing the violations are happening around tattoos that are not in alignment with the beliefs and the mission of LAPD, is one sort of set of information that we can interpret. But if we see I love my mom, you know, there's nothing wrong with the tattoo, that also serves as information for us to evolve and say, well, the offenses in terms of this policy aren't offensive in terms of the content of the tattoo. And so, again, maybe opportunities for us to obtain more data and information and use that to evolve the policy in the future.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I'll just introduce my question. Chief, I just want to thank you and Captain Patillo for your outreach efforts on recruiting. I went to Saturday's hiring seminar, and at 7 a.m. there were over 100 people sitting there. So that's encouraging, and again, thank you for the efforts. And with that, we did have someone drive from out of state again. So my question is, I was able to address everyone that was there that morning, and as they were filing out to take a look at the obstacle course, one young man walked up to me, stuck out his hands, and he said, I know you have a tattoo policy, but what about tattoos on my hands? And I read your policy, and it didn't suggest or indicate that a person could wear perhaps fingerless gloves to cover them. So what happens in his case if he doesn't have them removed? Is that an option?
So actually, the policy does talk about flesh tone glove or other appropriate coverings. So I believe it, but this policy went through a number of people, and we discussed a number of things, and we're hoping that not much was missed, but we are certainly willing to relook at policies as need be.
No, excellent. Oversight on my part. No, thank you. With that, I would go ahead and move that we approve the department's report. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. We'll move on to regular agenda item B, department's report relative to the 2024 department annual audit plan and charter. And I have Administrator Sargent. And if you'll introduce your colleague. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you. The report before you has two components, which I'll briefly go over. One is the 2024 Annual Audit Plan, and the other is the Audit Division Charter. As a quick reminder, the Audit Division Charter is a department guide for Audit Division staff. It's something that we typically revisit each year and make revisions if necessary. There are effectively no major changes in the charter at this time around, and it still covers all the basics, including Audit Division's mission, its reporting structure, access rights, and scope of work. As far as the annual audit plan for 2024, we will also be looking at traditional topics that we've examined before. After discussions with management, we decided it's time to revisit some of these high-risk areas and see if compliance levels continue to remain high. There are also a couple of mandated audits that you'll see we will be conducting on Assembly Bill 481, which involves reporting of military equipment used by law enforcement, and also the California Public Records Act, which is part of an ongoing 5-year settlement agreement for the City of LA. While this annual audit plan outlines the formal audits, Audit Division will continue to do inspections and special reviews as requested by the Commission or the Chief of Police. And we are happy to answer any additional questions you might have.
Thank you very much. I'll go to Commissioner Kalanche. No questions?
Actually, I do have a question.
Sure.
I know we discussed, and this, Chief, this might be separate from this, but I just wanted to see like where this falls. We talked about auditing front desks, right, as we walk into divisions. Is that a separate type of audit?
Yes, I think it's to me. Okay, so yes, the operations currently is involved in that, as well as other efforts within the organization to monitor it. Some of these are upfront audits, meaning that supervisors will conduct them at a local level. Others are done by a bureau and include not just front desk operations, sense of walk-up service, but also our voicemail and returning calls when calls are made to the desk. And what this is more global on a much higher level.
Got it. Just wanted to see where, yeah, because I think that's just as important. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Briggs?
I have no questions.
Thank you, sir. Vice President Shields?
Thank you. One question I had is just in terms of your efforts and the work that you do throughout the year, how much of it is dedicated to these specific audits that are on this, project plan versus have availability to conduct special reviews or other types of analysis reports? Can you divide up your percentage of the work that you do normally?
I would say that the audits that are on the annual audit plan, those take priority. Those are things that we are working on throughout the year. However, the special reviews and inspections come up during the same time period, so we're concurrently working on those as those arise.
Would you say the majority of your time is you do still have capacity to take on special projects as they arise throughout the year?
Yes,
is that right?
we do. Okay. We do.
And just, I know you mentioned both the CPRA and the Assembly Bill as mandatory audits. Can you just briefly, in a sentence, just explain what these other projects are so that we understand, like, what exactly you're auditing about these, like, juvenile detention procedures? Like, do you have a sense of what exactly you're focused on there?
Sure. These were all identified as higher risk areas, and while we specifically don't have the objectives, we would start by looking at prior year audits. These are things that we haven't visited in a while, so we want to make sure that the compliance is still high. But many of it is centered around forms, whether or not they're filled out completely, if they lack information, if they have supervisor approval, that type of thing.
In addition to that, what we've seen difficulties in the past is the logging in of individuals being detained, and then phone calls being, the detention of the juvenile, the phone calls being made, required phone calls within the first hour, and then additional phone calls within 2 hours. So that's time and motion study from the point the person comes in custody into their processing, including the amount of time it takes, should they be detained at a facility, what does that look like in adherence to those standards? And then years ago, this was an issue for us that we worked our way out of.
Thank you. Commissioner Garcia?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. I just want to go to your calendar year 2024 plan. Just a question about time. Let's just say time expired, if you will. You have, for example, the last bomb squad audit was in 2016. Correct?
Yes.
That seems 7 years ago to not audit the bomb squad. I'm just trying to understand why that is the case.
I think many of these audits, when they receive high compliance, they don't make their way onto the plan for the following couple years. Mhm.
Thank you. So then that would also be the case, for example, for property and evidence room, which is 2019, and juvenile detention procedures, which is 2019?
Correct.
Okay. Commissioner?
Commissioner Suthers, and I would ask that the Inspector General chime in here with respect to your question about the bomb squad. I believe that there was quite a fulsome report about the bomb squad following the 28th Street explosion, and the Inspector General's office went back quite a ways in examining various issues surrounding the bomb squad, and also the commissioners were provided with insight from some of our federal partners as well. So the commission has been provided with some detailed information about the bomb squad. Inspector General, do you want to add anything to that?
Just first to say that you're absolutely correct, Commissioner Briggs. That report was a little bit different than what the audit division I anticipate will be doing with regard to bomb squad, but there is a little bit of overlap I think that will occur. That report, as you're aware, Commissioner Briggs, was a very incident-specific report, but it did look, as you said, at historically issues with regard to training, issues with regard to decision-making in the bomb squad. To maybe respond to your statement, you're absolutely right. And the commission did see that report when it came out, and it came with recommendations that were adopted by this commission. I think what the audit division I anticipate will be doing will be looking more procedurally at issues with regard to the bomb squad, and less incident specific with regard to this major mistake that occurred, a major incident that occurred.
And from my recollection, this, for instance, we have ammunition bunkers or storage facilities, for instance, and the compliance with Cal OSHA laws and security of those locations. And there were things from the 2016 audit that built on some earlier audits. But it is an opportunity for the department also to follow up with the commission, because we're, as you know, had recommendations that are yet unfilled. For instance, establishing an alternative disposal site within the property of the city of Los Angeles. That's something that I want to keep the foot on the pedal to do. And then also the ensuring the training of our personnel and their fatigue factor and our staffing numbers.
No, thank you, everyone. And again, this was not to criticize the audit unit, but what jumps out to someone from the public who looks at this report is that it seems that nothing's happened since 2016. And so that if perhaps there's some way to better reflect this illustration, so that they don't have the impression that there are years that go by before we do some kind of audit or compliance inspection, and it happens on a very regular basis. But no, excellent job. It's just that this jumped out at me because it was 7 years ago.
Understood.
Okay, thank you. And with that, if there are no other questions or comments, I would go ahead and move that we approve the department's report. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much for your report. The board will now move into closed session.
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss item numbers 5A1 and 2 in accordance to Government Code 54957.
Okay. The Board of Commissioners are back in session. And we will have a report from the executive director for closed session.
Commission has concluded its work in closed session. Item 5A, 1, officer involved shooting number 004-23. Commission on a 5-0 vote adopted the recommendations of the chief of police, which were tactics, administrative disapproval, 2 police officer 2s, drawing and exhibiting in policy, 2 police officer 2s, lethal use of force, in policy, 1 police officer to rounds 1 through 3. Out of policy, administrative disapproval, 1 police officer to round 4. Item 5A2, non-tactical unintentional discharge number 012-23. Commission on a 5-0 vote adopted the recommendations of the chief of police, which were tactics, tactical debrief, 1 detective 3. Drawing and exhibiting does not apply. Unintentional discharge, administrative disapproval, negligent discharge, 1 detective 3. That concludes the report out.
Thank you, Mr. Executive Director. And with that, I would make a motion that we adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion is adjourned. Thank you very much.